My boyfriend hid my things, moved objects in the night, twisted every memory I had until I thought I was losing my sanity. But the moment I found the footage that proved he was behind it all, I planned a revenge he never saw coming. My name is Rachel, and for 3 years of my life, I was absolutely certain I was losing my mind. That's what he wanted. When I met Daniel, I wasn't broken. I was tired, sure, overworked, a little lonely, recently out of a long relationship, but I still trusted myself. I still believed that if I saw something, felt something, noticed something off, I could rely on my own judgment. He took that from me, piece by piece. That was his favorite kind of cruelty, slow, quiet, and easy to deny. We met at a friend's engagement party. I remember because he was the only one who actually seemed interested in talking instead of just taking pictures for social media. He was charming in a very low-key way, soft-spoken, self-deprecating, with a funny line always ready. He told me he worked in marketing for a boring but stable software company. I told him I was a junior architect. He asked questions, real ones. What kind of buildings did I dream of designing? Did I ever walk down the street and mentally redesign everything I saw? No one had ever asked me that before. By the end of the night, I'd given him my number. By the end of the week, we'd had our first date. By the end of the month, my friends were joking that I'd finally found one of the good ones. The first red flag came early, but it was so small I brushed it off. I texted him one afternoon, "Hey, how's your day?" He didn't respond. Hours went by. At 10 p.m., he finally replied, "Are you always this clingy?" I stared at the screen, stunned. I scrolled up to see what I'd sent, just that one text. I typed, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you." He replied almost instantly, "Relax, I'm kidding. You take everything so seriously." I told myself he just had a weird sense of humor. That's what I did back then. Made excuses for people they should have been responsible for. The jokes became more frequent. "Wow, you forgot? You're losing it, Rach." "I never said that. You're imagining things." "Are you sure? That's not how I remember it." The first time he contradicted something I was certain he'd said was about something stupid, a restaurant we'd agreed to try. We'd talked about it on the phone, picked a date. When I brought it up later, he frowned. "We never said that," he insisted. "You're mixing things up." I laughed it off. Maybe I did misremember, but it kept happening. 3 months into our relationship, I started forgetting where I put things, not once or twice, constantly. I'd leave my keys on the entryway table, then find them in the freezer. I'd put my coffee on the counter, then discover it in the bathroom cabinet. I blamed stress, lack of sleep, my demanding job. I started writing myself notes and leaving them on my phone, in my planner, on sticky notes by the bed. One night, after I turned my apartment upside down looking for my car keys, I found them on the balcony, on the floor, behind a plant. "I'm losing my mind," I whispered into my empty living room. The next day, Daniel picked me up for dinner. I tried to joke about it. "I think my brain's broken. I keep losing things. It's like they teleport." He glanced at me, then back at the road. "I mean, you've always been a little scatterbrained," he said casually. That word sat wrong with me. "Have I?" He shrugged. "You probably never noticed. I do, because I pay attention." It wasn't cruel. Not directly. Just suggestive. Like he was gently pointing out a flaw I hadn't realized I had. The real gaslighting didn't start until after he moved in. I didn't even fight it much when he suggested it. My lease was up, his place was bigger, and it made financial sense. He talked about our future in that vague, dreamy way that made me feel safe. I told myself this was what adults did. They compromised, they adapted, they merged lives. The first week we lived together, the apartment felt like a fresh start. New routines, shared dinners, joint grocery runs. The second week, I woke up to find my phone on the kitchen counter, dead, even though I was sure I'd left it charging on the nightstand. "You probably sleepwalked," he said, half laughing, when I told him. "I've never sleptwalked in my life. You know you've been really stressed," he said gently. "Sometimes stress does weird things to people. Maybe you should talk to someone." The way he said "someone" made me feel small, like I was already one step from being the crazy girlfriend everyone warns you about. Things went missing constantly after that. Not big things at first. Hair ties, my favorite mug, a USB drive, a ring my grandmother had given me. I'd ask if he'd seen any of them. "You're always misplacing stuff," he'd say, sighing. "You really need to slow down, Rach." Sometimes I'd find the missing item days later in a place I would never put it. My work ID card inside a shoe. My headphones in the laundry basket. A stack of important blueprints shoved in the back of the kitchen cabinet behind the pots. One night, I found my abandoned coffee cup, or what I thought was mine, in the sink, lipstick smear and all. I picked it up, confused. "I never poured coffee this morning," I said. Daniel, on the couch, barely looked up at his phone. "Yeah, you did." "No, I didn't. We overslept, remember? You rushed out and—" "Rach," he interrupted, giving me that patient, patronizing look I'd grown to resent without understanding why. "You freaking me out a little. Are you okay?" I put the cup down slowly. "I guess I am tired." When you hear the same thing enough, it burrows into your bones. You're tired. You're stressed. You're overreacting. You're imagining things. You're remembering wrong. It escalated in subtle ways. We'd have a conversation at night about money, plans, chores, and by morning, it never happened, at least according to him. "You said you'd pay the utilities this month," I'd say. He'd raise an eyebrow. "No, I didn't. You must have dreamed that." "We talked about it in the kitchen." "We did not." His voice would harden just a bit. "You really need to start writing things down if you're going to accuse me of forgetting." Accuse. Him. That was another word he liked. Suddenly, any attempt to clarify something was an accusation. Any expression of confusion became an attack. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find a wine glass shattered on the kitchen floor. Glass everywhere. When I asked him what happened, he shrugged. "You did that this morning." My brain glitched. "What? No, I didn't." "You dropped it when you were rushing," he replied, not looking at me. "I told you to leave it, that I'd clean it up. Did you forget that too?" I looked at the shards, at the empty, clean counter, at my hands, which had no cuts on them, and felt the ground tilt underneath me again. "Daniel, I would remember if I broke a glass." He finally looked at me. His eyes were so calm, patient, controlled. Mine already stung with frustrated tears. "You've been really out of it lately," he said softly. "I'm honestly worried about you. Maybe you should get checked for, I don't know, something neurological." By then, I had started to question everything. I downloaded a journaling app and began writing down conversations, dates, places, anything that made me feel like my reality was slipping. I wrote late at night, curled up in the bathroom so the light wouldn't keep him awake. I thought I was documenting my breakdown. Instead, I was documenting his. The first real crack in his version of reality came because of something stupid, a lamp. I loved that lamp. It was a warm brass with a patterned shade I'd splurged on. One day I came home and noticed it was gone from the living room. "Hey, where's my lamp?" I asked. He barely looked up from his laptop. "What lamp?" The one by the couch." He frowned. "We never had a lamp there." I stared at the empty corner, the outlet, the faint ring of dust where the base had been. "Yes, we did. I bought it when I moved in." "Rach, you're scaring me. You're obsessing over things that don't exist." I didn't argue. I just walked away. At 3 in the morning, when I couldn't sleep, I opened my photo gallery and started scrolling. I scrolled back weeks, months, and there it was. A photo of our living room, couch, coffee table, TV, and my lamp, right where I remembered it. 1 week later, I found it in the storage unit in the basement, hidden behind 4 boxes. I didn't confront him. Something inside me finally shifted that day. I stopped asking him if he moved things. I stopped telling him when something felt off. I stopped giving him information he could twist back around on me. Instead, I bought a tiny hidden camera. Then another. One went on the bookshelf in the living room, disguised inside a fake plant. One in the hallway, tucked into a coat hook. One in the bedroom, inside a hollowed-out alarm clock. All perfectly legal in my own home. And then I waited. I watched. When I had the footage, I knew it would hurt. I just didn't know how much. The first video I reviewed was from a Tuesday morning. I watched myself leave for work, bag on my shoulder, keys in hand. 10 minutes later, Daniel emerged from the bedroom. He walked straight to the kitchen, picked up my phone from where I'd left it charging, unlocked it, scrolled for a moment, then walked it back to the bedroom. He returned without it. I watched him open my bedside drawer. He took my grandmother's ring, one I had thought I'd lost, and dropped it into his pocket. Then, with the casual confidence of someone flicking off a light, he opened my journal, flipped through the last few entries, smirked, and put it back, just slightly out of place. When I watched that clip, something inside me went very still. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't stress. This wasn't me misremembering. He was moving things. He was reading my thoughts. He was intentionally making me feel insane. The second clip was worse. It was from a Friday night when I had gone to bed early. I watched him come into the living room, grab the wine glass from the cabinet, throw it to the floor, and step back as it shattered. He stared at the shards for a long moment, then carefully positioned them farther from the cabinet, closer to where we usually stood in the morning. He rehearsed what he would say. "I told you I'd clean it. You're really out of it lately. I'm worried about you." He practiced those lines out loud, like an actor in a play. My heart pounded in my ears. My hands shook so badly that I had to pause the video. Everything snapped into focus with terrifying clarity. He wasn't just trying to win arguments. He wasn't just lying to cover his tracks. He was systematically destroying my confidence in my own mind. Gaslighting. The word felt different now, no longer just a therapy term or something people threw around online. It was my life. I should have run. Instead, I planned. Because there is a special kind of rage that comes from realizing someone has been quietly rearranging your reality, not to protect you, but to control you. That rage doesn't explode. It condenses, sharpens, becomes very, very clear. I didn't want to scream. I wanted him to know what it felt like to have the world tilt under his feet, to question everything, to watch the life he built on lies crumble. So I decided to stay a little longer, not as his victim, as his storm. For the next week, I played the role of the softened, confused girlfriend he had spent years molding into. I let him think he still had me exactly where he wanted me. I let him watch me fold in on myself. I let him believe the performance he'd trained me into was still intact. But while he slept, I planned. I made copies of every video and stored them in multiple encrypted drives. One in my purse, one at my office, one in a safety deposit box. I saved screenshots, created a timeline, labeled each piece of evidence by date and location. I documented every incident, every lie, every conversation he later denied, every missing item I eventually found in places he'd planted them. He'd kept me in the dark for months. Now I watched him in perfect clarity. The first tactical move I made was subtle. I stopped reacting. When he moved my keys, I found them calmly and went on with my day. When my documents disappeared, I printed new ones. When he corrected me about a conversation we had, I nodded and let it slide. The less I pushed back, the bolder he became. One night, I watched from my hidden bedroom camera as he stood over me while I slept. He whispered to himself, "You're so easy." That one nearly broke me, but I didn't move. Not yet. I just made sure he felt safe enough to escalate. The more control he thought he had, the sloppier he became. 2 weeks later, the slip I had been waiting for arrived. I came home from work and found my laptop open on the coffee table. A spreadsheet pulled up, my budget sheet. Rows highlighted in red, expenses altered, numbers changed. I had not touched it. "Did you open my laptop?" I asked casually. He didn't even try to hide it. He was smiling, not with affection, but with that smug, patient smirk he used when he thought he was teaching me something. "You must have forgotten. You've been messing things up a lot lately. I fixed it for you." There it was. A confession. On camera. My hands tingled with adrenaline. I walked to the kitchen so he wouldn't see my smile. He had just handed me the weapon I needed. The next step was the exit strategy, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed one person I trusted completely, so I finally reached out to the one friend I'd been isolating from, the friend he hated most, Maya.
"Rachel," she whispered, "you look different. What's going on?" I opened my phone. I played the video of Daniel throwing the wine glass. I played the video of him taking my ring. I played the clip of him standing over me while I slept. By the time I was done, her hands were trembling. "Rachel, he's dangerous." "I know. What the hell are you going to do?" "Burn him," I said quietly. "But I need help." She didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need." We spent the next 4 days preparing. We organized the videos chronologically. We wrote a report. We hired a lawyer who specialized in domestic emotional abuse. We printed timestamps, screenshots, and transcriptions. We documented everything. The lawyer, an older woman with steel in her voice, looked at all our evidence and said, "He won't see this coming, and when it hits, it will destroy him." That was the first time I felt anything close to peace. But the real downfall required one last push, something so undeniable he couldn't spin his way out of it. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. On a Friday night, Daniel came home drunk. He dropped his jacket, slumped onto the couch, and started complaining about how everyone at work was incompetent. I stayed quiet, waiting. He turned his head toward me, eyes unfocused. "You know, you're lucky to have me. Anyone else would have dumped you by now. You can't even remember basic things. I'm basically taking care of you." I didn't respond. That irritated him. He got up, walked to the kitchen, and started knocking items off the counter. One by one. A glass, a salt shaker, a spatula. Then he grabbed my notebook, my journal, and threw it across the room. "You make me do this. You make me clean up after you. You make me feel like the bad guy." I just stood there, silent, watching. He grabbed my phone off the table and put it in the oven. "I'll tell you tomorrow you put it there. You'll believe me." He actually laughed, and that laugh, quiet, satisfied, certain, triggered something inside me. He stumbled into the bedroom and fell asleep, still muttering insults. The camera caught everything. The next morning before he woke up, I had already packed my essentials: passport, documents, clothes, the USB drives containing all the evidence. Maya was waiting outside in her car. I left the keys on the counter and walked out the door without making a sound. We drove straight to the lawyer's office where she helped me file a restraining order request, a police report, a formal complaint documenting psychological manipulation, and a petition to legally remove him from any shared lease responsibilities. Once the documents were processed, she sent the evidence to Daniel's workplace, HR, legal, and his direct supervisors, with a professional note stating that he was under investigation for emotional abuse and illegal access to my personal devices. By noon, I had moved into Maya's spare room. By sunset, everything had detonated. Daniel called me 12 times in a row. Then he texted, then he emailed, then he tried calling Maya. I didn't answer. Around 9 p.m., he sent the message I had expected. "What are you doing? Why are you lying about me?" I replied with exactly 8 words. "I have everything on video. It's over, Daniel." 10 minutes later, a blocked number called. I didn't need to guess who it was. HR departments don't like abusers representing their companies. 30 minutes after that, Maya received an update from a friend of a friend. Daniel had been escorted out of his office by security. The next morning, my lawyer called. She said, "His attempt to file a counterclaim failed. We showed the footage. He had nothing. You'll get the restraining order by the end of the week." I exhaled for the first time in years. Over the next month, everything unraveled for him. He lost his job, his landlord refused to renew his lease, his friends dropped him when they saw the evidence. His family, who'd always thought I was dramatic, called me to apologize. And the best part? He never saw me again. He expected screaming, breakdowns, begging. He expected chaos. Instead, he got silence. Cold, final silence. Because the truth is, there is no revenge more devastating than letting a man drown in the consequences of his own behavior. I didn't destroy him. I simply let the world see who he really was. I didn't tell him I had the footage. I didn't hint. I didn't act differently. In fact, I became the version of myself he loved the most: quiet, apologetic, self-blaming. The kind of woman who said sorry before she said hello. The kind of woman he thought he had successfully hollowed out. Let him think I was broken. Let him think he'd won. It made everything easier. Over the next 3 weeks, I collected everything. Every lie, every whisper, every moment he moved something in the house or rewrote history. I had more than enough video to expose him. I knew him well enough to know he'd deny until his last breath. Gaslighters always do. They live in a world where truth is clay. They mold it however they want, expecting everyone else to accept the shape. But I wasn't planning a confrontation. Screaming matches don't work on men like him. They weaponize them, twist them, cry to their friends about how unlynched their girlfriend is. No, I wanted something permanent, something undeniable that didn't require him to admit anything. I just needed one final piece: his confession. And getting it would require one very careful lie. On a quiet Sunday evening, I sat across from him on the couch, fiddling with the hem of my sweater like a nervous child. He didn't look up from his phone. He rarely did anymore. "Daniel," I said softly, "can we talk?" He sighed dramatically, like just hearing my voice drained him. "What is it now?" I think you're right. He froze. Then he finally looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw the thing he always tried to hide. The spark, the thrill, the satisfaction of victory. I hated that I recognized it. I think, I continued, lowering my voice, I've been forgetting more than I realized. He leaned forward, eyes softening with faux concern. Babe, I've been trying to tell you. You haven't been yourself. I know. I let his lip tremble. He loved when I looked small. It scares me, I whispered. I don't know what's happening to me. I feel like things aren't where I left them. Conversations get fuzzy. I'm losing time. He slid closer to me, putting a hand on my knee. Hey, it's okay. I'm here. I'll help you through it. There it was, the hero narrative, his favorite role. I swallowed shakily. Daniel, what if I've been blaming you for things that were really my fault? What if I broke the glass? What if I moved my phone? What if I really am losing my memory? He squeezed my knee gently. I told you I'll help you, but only if you're honest with me. I let silence stretch between us long enough for him to think he was pulling me back under his control. Then I looked down at my hands and said softly, what if I remembered something? He inhaled sharply. Remembered what? I hesitated, then whispered, the wine glass. He stiffened. I remembered dropping it, I lied. It came back to me yesterday, like a flash. Daniel's grip loosened. His voice cracked slightly. So you do remember? I think so. This was the moment he couldn't resist, crafting a false memory for me. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that's right, Rach. You dropped it. I told you that. You're remembering. He said it gently, soothingly, the way someone talks a child out of a nightmare. If I hadn't been recording him with a small audio device clipped to my bra, I might have screamed. Instead, I whispered, I'm scared. He pulled me into his chest. I know, but I've got you. Just trust me, okay? Don't question yourself so much. He held me for a long time, his hands stroking my hair like he owned me, like he had remade me, like he believed I was fully back under his control. But deep down, he had no idea he had just given me the final nail for his coffin. That night, after he fell asleep, I transferred the audio file to a secure folder. I clipped together the video of him breaking the glass, then layered his softly spoken words over it. You dropped it. You told me that. You're remembering. The next morning, the revenge began. Not dramatic, not cinematic, not loud, precise. First, I backed up every piece of footage and audio to 5 separate places. A USB hidden in my drawer, a cloud drive, a second cloud drive, my work computer, and one copy sent to my personal email titled, If Anything Happens to Me. Then, I went to work and requested a private meeting with HR. I didn't show anger, only concern. I told them I needed temporary leave due to a volatile home situation. They asked if I felt safe. I said, not exactly. They offered resources, counseling, legal assistance. I accepted all of them. Then I went home and waited. On Wednesday morning, I asked Daniel if he could take me to a therapy appointment. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, of course, it'll be good for you. We arrived 10 minutes early. Perfect. The receptionist greeted us kindly and led me to an office where a licensed psychologist waited. Daniel moved to follow me inside, and the therapist gently said, clients only. He frowned, confused.